Hey, everybody. Today we have an MMA and pro wrestling legend, Dan the Beast Severn. And this is going to be a great program today, folks. So you need to strap in and get ready. Dan, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me here. Even though we're long distance, we're basically about 2,000 miles apart here now. Yeah.
That's right. Dan's out suffering in this beautiful weather. We're up here, we're in 23-degree weather. Um,
I have to worry about what kind of sun tanning lotion I have to put on there. The sunscreen, yes.
I love that. I love that. Well, we're going to go on a little bit of a journey today, and I would like you just to kind of share. A lot of people might not be familiar with how you got back or how you got started in the world of MMA, your amateur wrestling background, being raised on a farm. How did you get into all this? How did this guy raised on a farm end up being one of the kings of the cage?
Yeah, well, again, John, you're doing it in a nice way of saying you're kind of an old guy here, Dan, and a lot of our younger audience probably doesn't know about you, which you are correct on to. But because we have social media and they can see all kinds of cool old archived type of elements that are now at their disposal. So, with all that being said, I'm a 67-year-old cat now, but I started off in the sport of amateur wrestling first and primarily because it was, well, I enjoyed the physicality, growing up on a farm and that. I enjoyed being involved in athletics, but then also I looked at it as an investment into how do I go to college and not have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for it. So I looked at this thing called, gosh, maybe if you get good enough at athletics, you might be able to get a scholarship, an athletic scholarship. So that was one of my first goals was how to secure an athletic scholarship.
Yeah, and you did have had quite a collegiate career, for sure. Can you kinda share with everybody how that went? I mean,
I mean, again, it's going to sound like rather being braggadocious here, but
be
I
be
also was.
braggadocious.
To people, I'm not being braggadocious. I'm just simply stating fact. In 1976, again, going way back in time, I was the number one recruit at my weight class. So I far exceeded during the actual season itself of wrestling. You know, our team, we would average somewhere right around 50 matches. But then through my spring, summer, and part of the fall, additional wrestling I would do between there was some folk style wrestling tournaments, but predominantly they were more or less Greco-Roman and freestyle. For the viewing audience that doesn't know what I'm talking about, the United States is the only country that does folk style, the style of wrestling that we do in our junior high, our high school, and even on a collegiate level. That's even a different type of folk style that we do yet. And the United States doesn't do very well at the World Championships or the Olympic Games because they've been doing folk style wrestling all of these decades. And when they're finally out of college, and the only way they can represent our country is in a freestyle Greco Roman. And so they're, again, 21, 22, and we're all our counterpart foreign countries. They've been starting with freestyle Greco right from age 4 or 5. They start them early, but they start them in gymnastic type programs doing things. I always say that United States is far ahead in technology, but when you look at physicality, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, we went up, this is a while ago, to train the Greco-Roman Olympic team back when they used to train up in the Upper Peninsula. And
Yes.
if people don't understand, you need to look up Greco-Roman sometime and just see the technique and the speed in throwing somebody. Coach Ivan Ivanov, we have him on here, and he made the Bulgarian bags to be thrown. And I tell you what, the technique is incredible, but that's not something you pick up overnight. And that's not something, if you go to a typical high school or college wrestling match, you're not going to probably see as many throws as you ever would in Greco-Roman. It's incredible.
Right. I mean, if we were in a room right now, and if you had the Greco-Roman team on one side of the room, and you had the freestyle team on the other side of the room, I guarantee everyone would be staring at the Greco guy because just genetically the way that they are built. They have bigger upper torso type frames, but they also have this like Neanderthal ridge right across the forehead there because of all the head butting that take
Mhm.
place, and they got the most gnarled up cauliflower ears compared to say even the freestyle guys.
Yep.
But then people like going, "What do you mean? What's this?" Well, a lot of times I actually have to even explain what a cauliflower ear is, but it's not a good look. In MMA, you see a lot of guys there too, the wrestlers that have that narrowed up cauliflower ear. But what I like about the MMA aspect is that wrestlers now reign supremely in that industry as well. They had to learn something about striking. They had to learn something about submissions, but the work ethic and the mindset of a wrestler, there's no comparison.
Yes, and I feel like the cauliflower ear and all those things, those are badges of honor for sure. You know, those are
They a
earned.
lot of coaches look at it now, but the ironic part, when I used to go out on the mat and wrestling internationally, I
Mhm.
go out on the mat and you're supposed to shake hands before the match starts. So as I go over to shake hands, I look at my opponent in the face, but I'm not really looking at the face. I'm looking at what ear is more damaged. The more damaged that ear is, if I look up at you and I see your left ear is damaged, that means you're coming to my right leg. And I actually had to teach that to some of these international coaches. They're like going, "How do you know what they're about to do?" I go, "I looked at their ears."
That is so cerebral. I mean, that is so great. I mean, that is so calculated. You know, somebody that's listening to this podcast is writing that down right now. They're like,
Well, I know it again and again. See, I always tell people that I don't mind releasing all the bags of tricks I have right now because, you know, I'm looking at that. My competitive career is kind of winding down. And they're like going, "What do you mean? You still actually compete at your age?" I go, "Well, you know, if I was to go to the masters division, I would be in the, what would be 60, 66 to 70-year-old. Do you think I'm gonna find another 66 to 70-year-old that's gonna push me around on that mat?
nope,
I don't think so.
nope.
At least not from the United States. There might be some Bulgarian, some Mongolian out there that might give me a little bit of a tussle, but I'll still bet the farm on me."
Absolutely. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, cauliflower ear. We're talking about head injuries. Let's get into the early days, back to your first fights in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. People, you know, they're watching the UFC all the time. It feels like there's one on every weekend now. It's gained
There
such
is.
such
There is.
yeah.
It's a well-oiled machine now.
Yeah.
A a a billion-dollar a year industry.
So it's much different. Can you, when you think back to those early days in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, how different? I mean, I watched them, so you know, because I've been a fan forever. But those early days, how can you explain it? How different it is today than what it was back in those early days? Because again, you got a lot of newer fans. They don't have any idea about how wild it was. It was the Wild West of MMA for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty simple to explain it in the most basic terms. The product that they watch today is simply civilized. That's the
Hmm.
probably the best way to say it. It's civilized. It has rules. It has time elements. Back in the what they refer to as the no holds barred or NHB time era, there was only two rules that those athletes had to abide by. Those being no biting and no eye gouging. End of the rules. And when I would say that to people, they would go, "You mean that they're not?" I go, "You didn't bite them, you didn't poke them in the eye in the process. You're good to go." And then when you think about no time limit, ultimate victory. Someone was gonna be unconscious, whether that was a knockout, a chokeout, and I think they could signal, that they were defeated by, tapping.
Hmm.
That basically were your 3 rounds out. It wasn't one of the very first rules that Big John McCarthy, the best known MMA referee from the Ultimate Fighting Championship, especially during the whole no hold barred era. John was also a LAPD. So, I mean, he was a big guy, very authoritative, and it was kind of ironic 'cause, the first time I ever met Big John was inside the octagon cage, and so he's performing his normal duty, so he's coming over to you, and he's very specific as the way he's saying his, things. He's like, "If you're in trouble," he goes, "You better give me some kind of a head nod, a wink, a thumbs up that you're still in this game." He goes, "Otherwise," he goes, "I'm gonna be stopping this match," and he always finishes up with, "Are there any questions?" So I'm going through the first time, and he hits me with that line, "Are there any questions?" I can't think of nothing, but just as he starts to turn away to walk over to the other, my opponent there and to go through the same routine, a goofy little line just popped up. I simply just said out loud, "Where did all that money go that my parents paid for piano lessons?" And he said he heard it, but when he turned back and looked at me in the face, he goes, he couldn't came from me because I had my game face on. So he goes over, does the same. So match number 2 comes up. He's coming over there and he's saying the same lines again. I know what's about to come. He hits me with the line, "Are there any questions?" And I'm like, "Yes, if you give me the winning lotto tickets, I wouldn't have lotto ticket numbers, I wouldn't have to do this shit." And he's like he's like, "This is the same crazy guy that said the first one-liner," and his wife is actually, also works with the company, helping with the travel, coordinations of hotels, all this kind of stuff, and he's, like, telling her that this guy's crazy and blah, blah, blah. Well, I end up having dinner with them, and I get to know the whole family, and I realize that I'm actually quite calm and collective, and I do things like that. It helps just to relax me to the point that Big John almost expected something to come out of me each and every time, and there was actually one match where Ken Shamrock was on top of me in a mount position for like 5 minutes. And he couldn't do nothing to me at all in this 5 minutes. Each time that he tried to push up, tried to rear down, I was holding on his lats, literally had to pull me up with him. So I'm holding on to him. It's what I refer to as a parasital type tactic to where I'm trying to take a toll on him. Even though he has a point of advantage, I'm still taking a toll on him. And I see his feet off to my left of me, and out of the blue, I pop out from underneath Ken's body, look right up at him, I go, "It's a hell of a way to make a buck," and I pop right back underneath there, and he's just like he goes, "Severy," he says, "You dumbfound me." I go, "The way that you can simply go into one thing and then go right back into to what you're doing again." I go, "I've been an amateur wrestler my entire life to know it's like, it's time to turn things on, go out here. Okay, it's done, move on to something else."
That's awesome. So let's talk about this for a moment. What was there a moment like in your career, especially in the beginning days of the UFC, where you realized this is my sport? I mean, I can really dominate. This is definitely for me. Was there a moment when you kind of realized that this you were going to have a great career with this?
No, I did not have time to sit down and think. Um, I was simply, it's gonna sound kind of bad here, but I simply just looked at each opponent as this is the bounty or the reward.
Mm.
Nothing personal, strictly business. I'm gonna try to take you out. I'm gonna try to take you out the nicest way possible. And I say that because I tell people if you were to go back and look at all of my matches, I did find one of the nicest way possible. I finished probably a very high percentile of my matches was not with a scarf choke, and it's nice compared to Mississippi, like someone like this, go Donkey Kong on you there, and and start just beating you at to pull. But and the only person I ever had like ill intent for was like a Tank Abbott, only because of for what he displayed and the way that he did things, and he was the only person I probably ever had a real ill contempt for. And the rest of it was like I simply know that you got to go back to work tomorrow. And you can't go back to work if your flipper's all twisted around, your head's twisted this way, and you're all gnarled on up. So, like, I always try to find the nicest way possible to take a person out, knowing that you got to go back and go to work. And there was no health benefits
For
in this
sure.
sport.
For sure. We had an opportunity. You talk about the changes of health benefits, all that kind of stuff. We were just down in Las Vegas in October and visiting the UFC training center. A lot has changed, and we'll get into that in a minute.
I mean,
It's a
it's
lot
an
different.
incredible, incredible facility. I mean, it's a Well, again, it's Dana White's office is right in there too, so he even has so many more toys for himself and in the area of longevity of his life,
Yep.
because he has, I forget the gentleman that did kind an analysis on him and it basically told him, I said that he did not have that many more years, that he needed to make some changes to his own diet and exercise routine, and Dana White has done that. So again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Life doesn't matter who you are. It's how you take care of yourself, and you've already have some predetermined things set in motion because what is your gene pool from mom? What is your gene pool from dad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we got into a little bit of the cerebral stuff a moment ago. How did you get the moniker the Beast? How did that come about?
Well, one of the, play-by-play commentators at one point in time, especially in the early days of the, UFC, they were looking for people of notoriety that could be involved with them, so they reached out to the legendary NFL Hall of Famer, Jim Brown,
Hmm.
and Jim Brown was, one of the play-by-play commentators, and in Jim's own words, he goes, "Dan, the first time I met you," he goes, "I did not even know you were one of the fighters because he met me first at a press conference. And at the press conference, I had already worked for 2 different universities, Arizona State and Michigan State, and I simply knew that when I show up to a press conference, typical attire would be a sports jacket, a tie, and I'm wearing my glasses. I could see up close, but I needed glasses to see distance. So everybody thought I was somebody's manager, and I had Al Snow, aka Al Sarver from Professional Wrestling World, and Al was all dressed up with the tank top, no tattoos, the whole. So they all thought he's the fighter, and I'm the manager. And then when they said all fighters to the head table, uh, I'm up there sitting, Al's out there, and people are like, who's this guy, and why isn't that guy up here? So that's where you know, I'll just say that's how things kind of like transpired. I just did not. They just not. They never knew how to take me, and even in my interviews, I would say kind of like almost like misleading type of information to them because it kind of going. I wanted to keep my private life kind of private.
That's
It's
awesome.
it's only really because I'll say because of social media now and the fact that I am slowly retiring from different things. It's kind of like going, it's like, I'll tell people that more than likely I am retired now from mixed martial arts. I don't think they're gonna bring out a senior citizen, division here anytime soon where you can't, you no longer need mouthpieces because you just put your dentures out on the table or something like that. No kicking any of the prosthetics and, yeah, I mean, they're if there was a professional wrestling company, they could make a kinda a very comical, mockery of that in today's version, but again, as professional wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into that in a little bit too, but let me ask you, how does your wrestling background help you in the cage when you're dealing with guys that are like pure strikers? You've got guys with all, well, you mentioned Tank Abbott, some of these guys that have totally different fighting styles. How did your wrestling background really give you an advantage in facing these guys?
Well, in the beginning, in the UFC, they being the company itself, categorized you as either being a striker or a grappler. Um, and you could be a striker if you're a boxer, kickboxer, Muay Thai, karate, kung fu, anything that use hands, knees, elbows, feet. And then the grappler category was anything of if you were a freestyle wrestler, a sambo practitioner, a BJJ guy, it didn't matter. You were fell into the category of a grappler. Had to look at what is my skill set. I'm not going to win any fisticuffs here with the punching aspect, but in my mind I'm thinking you have to be within arm's reach in order to strike me. You have to be within legs range to kick, knee, elbow, and so on. So I kept thinking, okay, stay a little slightly outside of as you throw. Because again, I watch people how they practice. And so as they throw punches out, they bring 'em right back on in. So I'm thinking, okay, they go for strike, they miss. As they recoil back in, move right in onto them to where if you were to get into a standing clinch, jam them up against the cage wall, take them down. If you did one of those 3 things, you've neutralized 90+% of the striker's capability, and from the grappler's perspective, you're just commencing. My 3 most reliable workout partners, I had a heavy bag, I had a throwing dummy that's utilized in the sport of amateur wrestling, and then also a wall-mounted takedown machine. Again, a very specific tool for amateur wrestling, and these were my 3 most reliable workout partners. They were always on time, they never complained, and I did things to them that I hoped I never had to do to another human being, but I practiced them nevertheless.
Um, so let's talk about this a little bit. Who was the toughest opponent? Because you faced all kinds of guys. Who was the
Well,
toughest opponent you ever faced, not just physically, but maybe in the mental aspect? Because again, you were a very cerebral fighter. Um, who physically and mentally would you say was the toughest that you fought?
well, it's a very easy answer to come up with. It'd be another grappler. I mean, it's because a lot of your viewership now they look at it's a younger audience, and they're watching and listening to these different podcasts and about the current fights that are coming up because just like you said, it's a well-oiled machine. Every single week there's another pay-per-view that's taking place. There's another show that's taking place. Either it's at the Apex or it's going to be at a big uh, pay-per-view or it's an international type show. Because again, as I said, that the UFC is such a well-oiled machine now. But when it comes down to what you said, um, having well, hmm, I knew what my skill set was. I'm still that grappler,
Mhm.
and I know that I need to take this match to the ground, or just get it to a clinch. As long as I get it to a clinch, and it doesn't matter they're watching things. What is their skill set? What is my skill set? All strikers still have to get within a range to strike you. I was always good about even I do a lot of my seminars. That I'll just tell a person, give me a fight stance, and again they always stagger 1 foot forward and one back. And the moment that I said, the moment that you do that, you have already dictated which way I am going to move. I'm going to move away from your strength, and I'm going to look to capitalize on your weaknesses. I'm going to slide over just a little bit because I
Okay.
know that that's got to be there. That's when you talk about, I use my mind more than my body, even though I prepared my body greatly. Because as I said, 3 most reliable workout partners: the throwing dummy, the wall mounted dummy, and the takedown machine. I use them in ways that I hope I never have to use. How do you practice headbutts?
Yeah, for sure.
Did you grab your partners and say, "Hey, how does this feel?" And no, you can't just bang away on that. So again, it just you. Yeah, I had my like I said, I had my 3 objects that I utilize a great deal, and I mean it was even really impressive because I had to be on location once for one of the Ultimate Fighting Championship things, and they had a throwing dummy, but it had a partial tear on one of the seams that you really couldn't see all that well. I could see it. And so they got these camera crews that are there kind of watching, monitoring something. I'm thinking, okay, let's do this. So I end up wrapping my legs around and upper torso, but I crunch my body down and close. So that all I'm trying to do is simply just elongate my skeletal system, which is a great deal of power. I end up tearing the thing in half.
That's awesome.
Well, not quite all the way, but I mean, tore it enough to where its guts are spilling on out. and they just lost it when they saw me do that, like, "Oh my god, you're gonna rip somebody in half out there?" And I'm like going, "Oh my god, this is." I'd always started my professional wrestling career, actually first, as of the 1992 Olympics, and, so it was I was thinking myself, "This is too easy, how these guys think that what I just did was real," and it wasn't, so
That's amazing. Um, let's just do this just hypothetical, and you might not have an answer to this one, but if you could go back in time and refight one bout with today's rules and training, who would it be and why? So if you could go back in time and have the rules today, I mean, you've got these shorter rounds. Who would it be if you could go with today's rules and training? If you even were interested.
again, that's actually it's a no-brainer. I'd only have 3 people that I said that would there be an open invite, therefore, it'd be, right down the list. I'd go with, Mark Coleman, Ken Shamrock, Royce Gracie,
Awesome.
and if I could throw those 3, that would be my last 3 matches. Even in my actual career itself, it was boiling down to where I was gonna get one more shot with, a Royce Gracie, and it just never materialized, and, I always tell people out of my entire cage fighting career, 'cause I refer to that as opposed to it was a NHB career, it was a MMA career, but, I only ever did 2 training camps. So when you think about that, only doing 2 training camps, and yet I had the record that I had, how was that possible? Well, I mean, I was always running classes because, whether I was running an amateur wrestling class or if I was running a mixed martial arts class, I was still if there was an odd number, I'm a participant. If there's an even number, I'm just the barking coach. So I always liked it if there was an odd number because that meant that yeah, I'm not gonna have you sitting on the sideline, John. You're gonna be participating. I get to participate with you. I just basically had only a couple rules in my training facility that it's okay to quickly to maneuver yourself into position, slowly apply pressure because you're not making any money. I can't have you get hurt and not be able to go to work and, be able to pay, your bills at home and stuff like that. So it's kinda like going out I was always really getting after the guys about some of the guys were just so, out of control that, it's like I actually had to tell 'em, You need to leave." I go, "You're not even paying your dues. You're here, and you're gonna run out 2 or 3 guys that are actually paying their dues." I go, "You do the math, and you tell me who you would get rid of." And again, they knew, and again, I go, "So I'm running the business, but then I'm trying to let these guys know that your career is only gonna be very short in the scheme of things. Try to protect yourself and not take all this damage because it will be with you for the rest of your life."
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this. So you 2 legends, so you and Don Fry, you guys were top competitors in your era. If you guys had that dream fight back then, what would be each one of your strengths? I'm curious because I feel like you guys complement each other a lot on strengths. What would that fight look like in your mind as far as you
is
each
is that because of the mustaches now?
But, I mean, you guys totally I feel like you guys, if you had that fight because you both have strengths, what would have that even looked like?
Yeah, no getting well, I mean, Don and I are even though we have similar backgrounds, the fact that he was a wrestler.
Mhm.
He was one of my wrestlers when I was coaching at Arizona State University. He lived with a couple of my younger brothers, so I knew Don much like a younger brother. And when he came to me, later in life, and he said, Coach Everett, he said, "Can you get me in the Ultimate Fighting Championship?" And I said, "I will." And what I tell people is that I only helped Don Fry get his foot in the door. He's the one that kicked it wide open for himself because it's like uh, doing like his opening match with Takayama in Pride. That's like watching Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It's and again. Your younger audiences don't know what I'm talking about there. They'll have to be Googling what's this guy talking about Rock'em Sock'em Robots. But because the number one most viewed combat match is Don Fry versus Takayama, and that was in the, company known as Pride that, they no longer are in existence, but, the UFC, there were drug testing finally came along in the UFC, but Pride didn't care about it whatsoever. I think they even promoted you to, please, use many drugs. Yeah, get big monster. Yes, they wanted to see Godzilla versus Mothra. Yeah.
Wow, I love it. Um, what was your all-time like, if you could narrow just one, I know it'd be hard, like, your all-time favorite fight, what would have that have been?
Well, again, I don't. I'm actually a rather peaceful type person, believe it or not. So I never looked at what good really comes out of fighting, other than you. Sometimes you got to lay the smack down in order to understand that there's rules, there's guidelines, and I'm not gonna let you push me around. Those that, I mean, because those were a couple of my own reckonings when and first in, like, the junior high age groups where it's like, I'm trying not to fight, I'm trying not to fight, I'm trying to avoid, but then someone just push to the point that, I just finally lost it and wiped them out, and there you have it. But, we live in a strange world now to where you gotta watch, what you're doing because these devices are everywhere. Whether you're doing something just sheer stupid, or if you're doing something that might be more courageous, it just all depends, did they capture the whole moment completely, so I don't know if I really answered your question here or not.
Yeah, that's good enough. We're definitely prying in here, so that's like, you answer what you wanna answer because I'm really curious about this. Your pro wrestling career, NWA champ, what was that like, and what was it like to work with guys like Jim Cornette? It's a totally different style, a promotion, personality, big personality. What was it like in the being NWA champion, which has such a history? If
Yeah,
people need to go back and talk about the man when the territories decided who was going to be the NWA champ, that was the guy that was going to carry the water for the
yeah,
companies. Talk a little bit about pro wrestling and what your experience was like, and some of the characters maybe that you worked with.
yeah. You asked a lot there, but, I mean, it's, the territories versus what it is today, 2 different worlds. It was Vince Jr. that really kinda basically took away the territories because, what he ended up doing, he just started, buying up the best talent from each different, organization. It was if I was to now, I mean, I was a professional wrestler, but, I mean, the era, I should say the time era that would have probably best fitted me was back to the old territories where you might be back in Eastern states, and you've been there for, like, the last year and a half, 2 years, but because there isn't any social media, there's no pay-per-views, people are not seeing you and I wrestle the same match town after town after town. Eventually, there is what they call the loser leaves town match. I've already got my contracts, it came to an expiration for wherever I'm at on the East Coast here now. I'm heading to the West Coast. I lose my match, and it's all part of the history. You're out of there, and blah blah blah. So, and I head out west, and then for the next couple of years, I'll be out west and doing my routine. I would have been probably best suited as that journeyman type of time era. Um, Now, because of all these little cell phones and devices, it kinda has pulled back the curtain to where you see it's the wizard who's, running all the buttons and stuff like that, and, um, it's taken away some of that, imagination, I think, that comes along there with it. Uh, well, I mean, it's harder for the athletes to have long storylines, but then also you really have to mind your P's and Q's because even in some of the most innocent circumstances, people can taint things in ways to where, you know, they've got AI now. There's all kinds of things that they could do with AI that what was an innocent looking type of situation, also it's like, you know, now they can take it into a not so innocent type of situation. So
Mhm.
that's why I tell the young athletes that be careful of where the cell phone lies because, you know, with AI and the whole nine yards, there's all kinds of stuff. And we live in this world where now you're guilty until proven innocent, whereas before you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and pro wrestling, you this is one of the big things we always talk about is you if you're going to be successful, you still have to have even if things are predetermined, you still have to have tremendous athleticism.
oh,
Especially, I mean, that's what puts butts in the seat. They want to see athletic moves. They want to see, and I'll never forget. There was just something about when the MMA guys invaded the world of professional wrestling. We had the baddest man on the planet, Dan the Beast Severn. When all that came, I mean, it really did usher in a whole different era because it kind of really suspended disbelief a little bit when we have here's the baddest people on the planet, the toughest guys now invading this world where things may be predetermined. So you really came in an interesting time period that definitely, I feel like changed pro wrestling forever.
yeah, Shamrock, both Shamrock and I were working for the same company at the same
Mhm,
time, and then we had ongoing type of aspects from our Ultimate Fighting Championship days, but then we're also now working in the same company under the same roof. It seemed like that Owen Hart was being thrown into the mix, and Steve Blackman was being
mhm.
thrown into the mix. So there's it just I'll just say it just made life kind of interesting. You'd asked me before about, having like Jim Cornette. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better mouthpiece because
Oh, yeah.
Jim simply knew that I was not going to be the one that's going to sit there and cut these crazy promos and stuff like that. So, but Jim had to get the gab. He could cut all the crazy promos for me. All I got to do is simply just walk out there and just do what he said. That's all. So I think it was a perfect fit to have him as my mouthpiece.
Yeah, and you guys made a great team. It was fantastic, and people, you need to go back and
The
look
other
on the
aspect
internet.
you mentioned a little bit earlier. I mean, the NWA. Jim had never even met me. He was running his Smoky Mountain
Mhm.
promotion.
Yep.
His champion at the time, well, I'm drawing a blank here right now, but he allows me to come in. Chris Candido.
Candido, yep.
Chris Candido was the champion. He had never met me before, but he allows me to come in, and the whole auspice was I'm just there watching the professionals show. Somehow there's some interactions between Chris Candido and myself where it leads to an impromptu match held later that evening, and then for me then to win the NWA title belt. That speaks volumes for Jim Cornette to allow me, without knowing anything about me, to come in and to beat his champion, and then to run with his NWA title belt. That again just speaks total volumes about him and his faith in me, I guess.
Yeah, having the NWA championship, I mean, that is such an honor, so it speaks a lot to you too. Um
Also meeting Luthez. I mean, because I always tell people that and there's a lot of people that, like Ric Flair always claimed to be the man, but Luthez was the man when you look at how many years he had a stranglehold on that NWA championship title belt. Luthez made money for the company. He was a crowd favorite. He was a technician. He wasn't a flamboyant wrestler. He was an actual technician. That's where I tell all these professional wrestlers the marquee says professional wrestling. Give us a little bit of wrestling, not just always, you know, chops, punches, and clotheslines, and give the folks something called wrestling on top of that.
Yeah, when I was a kid, one of the big moves was the abdominal stretch.
There
They
you go.
you might sit in the abdominal stretch for 5 minutes, but here's the thing, the guys could hold the audience because it's all about the personality and telling a story, and so, yeah, I love the old school stuff. Um, Talk about a little bit about conditioning for a second. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. What did your conditioning look like um, for a match, and how much time did you have leading up to some of the original UFC matches? Because, like I said, now you've got guys they know way far out. They've got all kinds of recovery methods. What did your old school conditioning look like? And a second part of that is maybe what are some of those old school techniques that would carry over to today?
Yeah, well, and like just like what you said, standard um, young fighter today might only fight a couple times a year.
Mhm.
They've got a long break in between time. Back then, there was a show taking place every 3 months. It was like clockwork, and that was you're not just fighting just once that night. You're going to fight 3 times in a 2 hour pay per view. As I stated before, I only ever did 2 training camps,
Mhm.
where I mean, literally where I left my family behind, and it was all about me, because I did not wanna be a husband to, I could not be a father of, I had to, become just a competitor that, could headbutt you, could do almost anything I possibly could, and yeah, and it worked for me for those 2 different training camps 'cause, as I stated earlier, I set 2 different records where I stayed in the octagon cage the longest, just over 1 hour, and I finished up, 3 opponents in the shortest time ever possible, so those are a couple things that I hold proudly there as well, um, but also what I'm looking at, I wanted to know that I could go through my career and not be damaged goods.
Mhm.
I did not well, like we talked about before, cauliflower ears and things of that nature. I was gonna try to avoid that as much as I possibly, could. But then also you gotta look at, are athletes training correctly? Are they, I mean, 'cause I mean, I look like one of the biggest dorks in the world because I always wore headgear, and the headgear I had, I mean, I still actually have those headgear and that. I got a couple different pair, the old circa 1970s headgear that, have the, big metal inserts on top of them,
The big
but they're
circles.
so tight, and you
That's what
got
I
the
had in
chin
high
strap
school.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I still have a couple of sets of those that were they're still set to my noggin to where I should be. I know that I could even lose the chin strap, but they're on so snug that they'll never come on off. I just wanted to finish my career, not just be looking like, some monster of having a big old flattened nose and big scar tissue and stuff like that. Um, but I was always training in the sense that I always got up and I would go out to my training facility, and I would always do, like, about a 45-minute window of time for myself. That's even something that still even carries over still to this day that, as an older, athlete, um, I can't train every single day. I do, but I do things differently, whereas I go to the gym every other day now. It gives me more recovery time. I have better results by going every other day like that. Um, but then on the opposite days, I might be outside here. Well, I mean, here in Arizona, towards like I might just do some sit-ups, I might do some push-ups, I might just do some stretching. And then you gotta look at, okay, I'm getting up there in years. America and Americans are known for being very sedentary. A lot of sitting. I set my cell phone for about an hour to an hour and a half type increments towards like the alarm will go off. It takes me out of my work trance, because I mean, when people say, a work trance, what do you mean? I get so into responding to emails and other types of, responses that I do get into a trance, and before I know it, several hours will pass, and I don't even know it. And so I set my alarm to where it takes me back out of my work mode, and then I go outside. I get some sunshine, I peel the shirt on off, whatever, get some of that good old vitamin D, and just do a few little odds and ends type chores. I'll clean the pool basket out. I've got I usually keep a set of hedge clippers out to where I go over, I trim up this, that, I rake up a few more leaves. It's or then there's picking up the dog poop.
There you go. Hey, having
You
to
know,
bend
still
over.
still got Still got those domestic duties that I have to do there because we have the pooch, and so, you have to clean up after them, it's a whole different type of scenario. If I was, like, down in Coldwater, I have a lot more property that I don't really unless the dog does his business right up there next to the house, I'll never see what he's done.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, we always say that, I don't know who came up with the phrase, but movement is medicine.
yeah.
And, like, that's why people think I'm crazy around my office. I've got balance boards. I've got a slack block. We're always getting up, trying to do something, trying to do some kind of motion. We've got cables in there, stretching machines. It doesn't take a lot, but movement is medicine. And, it does a lot of healing, especially with the recovery. Well, just a couple more questions. What are you up to these days? You always seem to have something going on.
Well, I'm still, I'll say that I travel a great deal. I still conduct seminars. My first love is still conducting amateur wrestling seminars, um, for, folk style, but then I'm still involved in freestyle Greco. Um, I like we're the only country that does folk style, and again, I've got some vested interest into that because I have grandkids now,
Mhm.
and so my kids, again, my kids, they're all adults. A couple of them have families, started and that, and having the 5 grandkids. And whenever I'm in Coldwater and the grandkids are coming over, when they see that grandpa is there, they all scurry out to my training facility. And they just tell their parents, "We want to go and play with grandpa." So they get it down to where they're playing with grandpa. So they come in and they know when they come in, take your shoes off. 'Cause I don't allow them to run on I don't allow myself to do it. I'm not gonna let my own grandkid do it. They take off their shoes and stuff like that. They'll take off their socks 'cause stocking feet, they'll slip a little bit more, whereas bare feet, they can, be on a mat even easier yet. So I'll be out there and I will be doing forward rolls with them, backward rolls. I'll be showing them how to stand on their head. I've got these balloons out there that I've got them going through these balloon drills, hula hoops. Yes, dance ever can hula hoop.
That's awesome. Hey,
But
hips are the power.
no, it's, but they see me doing things, and my kids are like, "What are you up to, pops?" And I'm like going, "Well," I go, "I'm making memories for my grandkids." I said,
Absolutely.
"Most grandparents are gonna be sitting in a chair
Yep.
talking." I go, I wanna be out doing for as long as I can doing. I said, "I'm doing right now with your children, AKA my grandchildren. If I do a good enough job and hang and keep taking care of myself, I might even do it for my great-grandchildren one day," you know?
Yeah.
And I go and I said, "But you're right. Your diabolical dad is out here because 'cause he's got a plan knowing that instead of giving them a electronic device that they'll have the best thumb-eye coordination. No, they can actually do physicality type of things. I am developing hand-eye coordination, gross motor skills. I go, I am building the alpha females, alpha males of the future, and I might save you," as I point to my kids, I go, "I might save you probably at that time, it might be $250,000 that will cost to send your child to college
Yep.
on an athletic scholarships." So I'm like, "Now, do you want your father to continue to play with his grandchildren?" And they're like, "They're all yours, pops. They're all yours."
Yep.
So, yeah.
And it's so interesting, I wish we had time to talk. A lot of kids can't do a somersault today. They don't, they can't do simple little things, rolling, just crawling, you know, walking with a normal gait, moving the arms. A lot of kids can't do it today.
Yeah,
So,
give him this device, it's a whole different world. Again, it's even the first time I saw my son doing this thing, I'm like going, where do they teach this typing class? Because I tell people that I actually took a typing class,
me too.
and when I'm using my laptop, these are typing skills. And is this a elite or just a pica type of a keyboard that I'm using? And again, even people don't even know what I'm talking about there, but those were your two types of typewriters back then. That's something I learned in high school, knowing that I have to be able to type papers and stuff like that later in life for college.
Yeah, that's a lost art. I mean, we're taking typing too. I like What do you mean you took typing in high school? Yeah, typing was a class you
Yeah,
took. You actually got a
yeah.
grade in it, you know?
But going to this device, I mean, even I remember watching my son, he's driving down the road, so one hand's on the wheel. He's not even looking down at his cell phone, and he just knows where every button is at, and he's just sending a text message off. And I'm like going, wow. That just again, that there's a skill set to that, but the fact that he was able to memorize the keyboard and know where everything's at, but then I know the keyboard on a typewriter still.
My
That
thumbs are
class was way back in the early '70s.
yeah, my thumbs are not that educated.
Yeah.
So last two questions. What's one piece of advice you would give our listeners? And then the second part is where can they go to learn more about you or take in some of your knowledge or book, if maybe they want to book a seminar, maybe they want to bring you in for a training. You've got such a vast, you know, you've forgotten more than any of us will ever know about wrestling. So if they want to book something like that, so what's one piece of advice? And then where can they find out more about how to learn from Dan the Beast Severn?
Piece of advice, I've lived out of a planner since my junior year in high school. A lot simpler times then because it was just what wrestling camps, what wrestling terms I wanted to go to. But now it's like, just writing down interviews and meetings, appointments, the whole 9 yards because I live even a crazier life now than I did earlier. And so again, you don't even have to buy a planner. You can just get a calendar. Again, I don't even know how many people even have calendars. They used to be the insurance companies used to give away calendars all the time for free.
You know?
And I know that I always keep I've got the old fashioned calendars up and then I have my portable planner because I write more meticulous like notes even inside of it. But I'll say it'll help to keep you on schedule, especially do you have any goals? I'll say it again. What I say it like that, okay, because there's what I call there's wishful thinking, and then there's actually realistic type of goals. Um, I have kind of a blend of both. There's that wishful thinking, but then there's also those goals that come along there with it. I know for example, it's kind of like one of those wishful type thinking says, I want to live to be 125. I don't know why is I keep coming with this time frame of going to 125. And so at 67, it means I'm about due for my midlife crisis here.
I love
And
it.
I don't know if that what that means, but it's like going, but a lot of it has to do with your state of your mind. Some people just they have really pretty crappy a mindset to them, and I'm thinking you need to start taking in a little bit more positivity at the end. I mean, to know that there is hope, there is opportunity, there's opportunity around you. It just all depends on what do you want to do with your life, and that's kind of how I look at things. I'm still full of ideas, and I'm still even full of inventions I want to bring to life. So,
Awesome.
longevity and, healthy but, through the process of that is not only just staying healthy, but then also building wealth along there with it because knowing that you have the freedom to do. It's one thing simply just to be old, but then if you're old and poor, like, well, people are just going to kind of pitch you off to the side and abandon you. So, but if you have your own means to do whatever, well, that's another great attribute to have. So you have to take control of your own destiny in so many different areas. Your health, your well-being, whether that's just your body or even your future, what you want to do. I still like travel, so I want to travel as much as I possibly can, just to, again, just to experience unique things, or go back to other countries I've been to before, just to see how it has it changed in the last 20, 30, or more years.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, how do people book maybe a seminar? How do they get in touch with you if they want to have, learn from you or have a folk style? seminar or class, how would they go about that?
Probably the best way, and again, and hopefully you can just put this up at the end, just give them
Sure.
my email address, so dan@dansevern.com.
Okay.
Severn, Severn is the correct spelling, but the email address, dan@dansevern.com. I've actually had a couple of different email addresses, but that's the one that I started off with way back when. It's the same one that I have now. I do receive lots of emails. Um, I like knowing that I still have to scratch my head wondering, "How am I gonna still do it all?" 'Cause you sort of get to a certain point, you wonder what you're gonna do, and I keep wondering how do I continue to do it all? Because I do like the variety of life that I have. I like, coming in and being, you know, the spotlight being thrown on you, but then asking you questions, and then responding with those questions, but then, coming along with, even some, stories that go along there with it that helps reinforce your response. Because I always tell people, giving an answer is one thing, but then to actually show how you applied that in your life, that's even a better response yet.
That's
So
awesome. Well, everybody, I want to thank our guest, Dan the Beast Severn, for investing in all of our listeners today. Thank you so much, Dan, for being on the show.
well, I appreciate you for having me. And again, like I said, if your audience is interested in learning more, contact me through dan@dansevern.com.